Namaste. My name is Kaustubh Shinde. I'm a student of MVDL, that is Masters in Vedic Literature, batch 22 to 24. As a part of my project review, I'm going to present my study on comparative study of origin of universe between Big Bang theory, steady state theory, holographic universe theory, and Vedic theory. Let's begin. So this is one topic that has kind of bugged the human race, especially since probably the beginning of our existence. So it is very natural. Even babies would somehow wonder, I guess, what is this thing that we are in? How did it come into being? And who created it and for what reason? Civilizations after civilization try to think over it. They propose their own theories using multiple approaches. Most should be categorized into sensory input based, that is what we see, what we feel, what we hear. Based on that, right, we try to make a mental map of how the universe must be and how it must have begun as a part of, let's say, thought experiment. And the other would be basically acknowledging the fact that the world that we see, hear, perceive is not all there is, because our senses inherently are limited. So the way to go beyond it is transcend our abilities of perception and go beyond that in deep meditative states where you become one with the universe and the universe reveals the knowledge itself to you because you become Brahman, so to say. In this paper, we are going to look at proof prominent theories from both of these categories. So first, let's talk about the paradigms that both these approaches have. In scientific approach, as I said, um, it's basically what you see is what you get. Only things that we can sense either through our natural sensory organs or scientific apparatuses that are capable of seeing, seeing, let's say, very microscopic objects, let's say, electronic microscope, something like that. But even those have limitations. But scientific paradigm basically states that only thing that we can actually observe, measure, those are only real. Everything else is abstraction. And any power that is in higher abstraction that transcends space-time is completely rejected as scientific. And scientific paradigm, the one big problem is everything in the universe can be explained as simple pattern using a mathematical equation. That's the basic assumption. In this category, we have three theories: the Big Bang, steady state, and holographic universe. Even though, as we'll see, holographic universe sort of falls, it tries to at least break the barriers somehow. Vedic paradigm, on the other hand, it acknowledges that both para, that is spiritual, and apara, worldly knowledge, are important to actually have a true knowledge of the universe. Uh, and Vedic paradigm also acknowledges that senses are inherently limited, and the true knowledge is beyond the capabilities that uh, sense and intellect can have possibly. And Brahman, the supreme being, is attributeless and immutable and eternal. So everything that in the universe, everything in the universe comes through it. It is sustained by it and it completely dissolves into it. To experience Brahman, one needs to purify mind and go beyond the attachment of senses because senses are completely incapable of perceiving a thing that is something way beyond their grasp. Purusha Sutta falls into this category. So let's talk up with the Big Bang Theory. Uh, we'll try to limit the scope of the discussion because otherwise it will get too technical. But what the theory states is that in the beginning there was nothing, and there was one point that was infinitesimally small, practically zero volume. It had infinite density and extremely high temperature, infinite temperature. This point is called singularity. The singularity got extremely hot and it exploded with a huge bang. The explosion led to expansion of space, time, matter, and energy. As the universe expanded, it cooled down. Uh, which basically led to the generation of subatomic particles, atoms, and eventually galaxies and other things from that. This is a visual representation of the Big Bang. Excuse me. This is visual representation of the Big Bang, where the timelines are shown. It is not important at the moment. The most, the smallest unit is called Planck time, which is 10 raised to minus 43 second, in which most of the expansion happened. And as we see, then, in a few seconds, the matter cooled down a little bit, led to subatomic particles, and eventually atoms, then galaxies, and so on and so forth. This theory has some inherent weaknesses, which is it is not explained how the singularity came to be. There is one thing to say that everything was extremely, it's a mass of infinite density gathered at zero volume, practically zero volume, and infinitely high temperature. But where did this come from? That is not explained. That is basically just an assumption. It is also mentioned in the theory that in the beginning, almost immediately after the Big Bang, matter and antimatter were created in equal quantities. Logically, they both should have destroyed each other, but that's not what we see in the universe because there is a matter that sort of dominates the universe. Uh, Cause of inflation, the universe is expansionary. The galaxies are traveling away from each other all the time. What causes this expansion is also not explained. Other such theory is steady state theory. It was devised to address some limitations of Big Bang theory. But this theory stands rejected as of now. I'll explain the reason. But the steady state theory says that the universe always existed and it looks the same from every spot in it and at every all the times. So it is to basically some current idea of the Big Bang, the explosion. Uh, but to keep the form of the universe intact, it states that even though the universe is expanding, its density does not change. For that to happen, new matter has to be created as it expands. And this is something that is the key assumption, which is very difficult to prove. And also, scientists recently discovered or detected CMB, that is cosmic microwave background, which is the residual radiation from the original Big Bang. And this was predicted in the Big Bang theory. For a long time, we did not have instrument to actually detect those and test those. Now we do, and after this discovery of the CMB, this theory stands refuted. So we are not going to discuss this in detail. There's another interesting theory is called holographic universe. It is interesting because it is a completely scientific theory, yet it stretches the boundary of imagination, which made even scientists that is uncomfortable. But fortunately, to very big brains of very high stature are behind this. And another interesting thing is two different scientists from completely different fields. One was neurophysiologist, which is basically a brain doctor, you could say, and other is a physicist, theoretical physicist. They both arrive at the same idea, researching two different subjects at the same time. So Dr. Freebraham, who was the brain doctor, so to say, he was trying to figure out how the memory is stored in the brain. Now, prevalent understanding was that specific parts of brain stores specific memories. But during his experiments, he found out that that was not really the case. Even after removing parts of brain, the subjects were able to retain most of the information that they had, and that was confusing for him. So eventually, he came to a conclusion that memory is stored uniformly across the brain all the times, but he wasn't sure how exactly that will, how to exactly make this happen. So eventually he stumbled across the theory of hologram. So what is a hologram? Hologram is three-dimensional picture made in the air, and it is based on a film, a small film, where lasers are used to capture a real picture and have an imprint on this two-dimensional film. And when light passes through it, it will project in the air a three-dimensional hologram. And this looks real, but it's obviously there is nothing in it. If you push your hand through it, it will go through. But one interesting about hologram is even if you divide the film into multiple different parts, each of its piece retains the entire information of the film. So this is something that's fascinating, and that's where the idea of a brain as a hologram appeared to creep from. He wanted to test it with an expert, and he found physicist David Bohm. Now, Bohm himself was trying to figure out the behavior of subatomic particles. Subatomic particles are tiny particles that do not adhere to the Newtonian law of objects. They have their own laws. I won't go into too much details here, but let's say they act as a particle and a wave at the same time, depending on if you're looking at them or not. So a quanta, just subatomic particle, it will appear as a particle only when it is being observed. Otherwise, it will be a wave. Now, how do you reconcile all this? So after much research, he arrived at the conclusion that the particles do not behave in isolation. They behave as if they are part of a whole. And the particle is not moving itself, it is just basically adjusting its behavior to support the behavior of the whole. And to go even further, he proposed that the entire universe is basically a giant hologram. Uh, this presents some interesting ideas. We'll get into that in detail later. Now, let me come to the Purusha Sukta. This is the Vedic Sukta, Vedic creation idea. So far, we have seen the creation theories from the lens of scientific paradigm. Here, the paradigm completely shifts. So, Vedic scientific theory that talks about creation of the universe is Purusha Sukta. It appears in Ayurveda, but it also appears in all four Vedas with different variation. Uh, The this Vedic theory focuses on realization of knowledge and not assumptions, as opposed to scientific theory. So, as we saw in Big Bang theory, also there's a massive assumption for a singularity, a point that you cannot define, you cannot explain how it could come into being, but this is our starting point. Uh, in Vedic theory, there are no such assumptions. It is just a complete submission to the Supreme Brahman, and instead of going from matter that we see perceive and then going back into time to describe what could have led to its emergence. The Vedic theory actually starts with the supreme being, which is pure consciousness, and then proceeds to explain how the energy and matter came into being from that supreme being. Here, the word Purusha is defined as Pura and Usha. Pura is a city or town. Usha is the dawn that provides energy. So the Purusha becomes the one who ignites and activates the universe, which is the Brahman. In the Purusha Sukta, the process of manifestation of the universe is described, and it is described as a yajna. Uh, so Puranas and even Upanishads are full of allegories that are basically trying to explain very difficult concepts through procedures that are known to people of that time. So yajna was very common process. So everything is here being explained through the medium of yajna, and even Purusha for that matter. Here Purusha is a human body, so to say, but it is not actually human body. It's a cosmic being. It is the Brahman itself. But to make people understand, these analogies are used. And this is is performed by Purusha. Now, in the beginning, there was nothing but Purusha, that is Brahma. So who is performing the yajna? So Purusha is performing the yajna. He himself is the oblation, and he himself is a medium. So Purusha in this case is the material, instrumental, and efficient cause. Nothing existed before apart from Purusha. He contains this entire creation within him, and it's infinite. Only one quarter of Purusha is the manifest world, and other remains unmanifest. Uh, Here we go into details of the creation from this Purusha, which is still the supreme being. Virat is born. Now, this is a Saguna form. Purusha Brahman, it is obviously attributeless. Now, Virat then sacrificed himself in the yajna to create galaxies, solar system, Earth, and all the universe that we see. Now, there should be someone to perform the sacrifice, and at this point, life is not born. So, the Sukta defines the entities that are performing the sacrifice. Devta, now, Devta comes from the root of the word also, it means shining thing. So here we assume that these are celestial entities. These are performing this. No, again, this is an analogy. We need to understand this storylining, and then it is the ghee is compared to spring. So in the Yajna, spring is offered as a ghee. Uh, Summer and autumn are oblations. So this is, in a way, is a reference to three states of creation, maintenance, and dissolution in allegorical form. The yajna process itself is described in detail in the paper that accompanies this presentation. But roughly, three Vedas were born out of this yajna. From these, sun, earth, and rainwater were born. Uh, for the rest of the bodies, there's some very interesting analogies here. From the face of this Purusha, came the Brahmins, from his two arms came the Kshatriyas, from two thighs came Vaishyas, and from his feet came the Shudras. This mantra gets a lot of criticism because we somehow confuse Varna system with the caste system. Here, there is nothing casteist about it. This is just the explanation of Varna system through the analogy for Purusha and his creation. Again, to continue the storyline, mind was born from the moon. From the two eyes was born the sun. From his son were born both Indra and Yagni. From his breath born Vayu. From his navel produced the Antariksha. Dyuloka heaven came into existence from his head, and the Bhumi evolved out of his feet. And Disha, the directions they came from here. Now, each of this analogy, it has a deeper meaning, which we unfortunately don't have time to go through. But let's just to the point, like why are directions compared to ears? So ear basically perceives signs from all direction. Even when we just hear sound, without even if our eyes are closed, we could perceive the sound coming from a certain direction. That is the philosophy behind comparing each of these to different items that we see in and around us. And then this is just a pictorial depiction of what I explained about the world system. Okay, now we have discussed all four theories. They belong to different paradigms. Here we can see similarity, even though the approaches and philosophies as both these school of thoughts are extremely different. There's still quite a few similarities. So between Big Bang theory and Approachikta, the origin is a single point. Even though origin in the Big Bang is a material point of mass, even though it is infinitely small, it is still material. In the Purusha Sukta, even the beginning is the Purusha. Purusha is not some sort of a material; it is attributeless. But still, I mean, we can have this similarity for the sake of comparison. Expansion and manifestation, yes, expansion of the universe from happened from a singularity. Similarly, here everything was born out of Purusha. CMB, as I explained before, CMB is cosmic microwave background radiation. After detection of that, that was compared to Om, the sound of that is primordial sound, by various experts. So that is something that we also can consider fairly similar. Uh, then to move on to holographic theory is very interesting because it basically perceives the universe as a whole, and each part in it contains the entire universe itself. That is extremely similar to the Upanishad concept of Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande. So in microcosm exists macrocosm, and it also acknowledges that the world as we perceive could be vastly different because what the theory proposes is that all we see, all we have around us are basically just different frequencies. Now our brain somehow interprets those frequencies and projects this world into our intellect or mind or whatever you have it. But just because we see something as a tree, is it actually a tree? It is just a bunch of frequencies that are intertwined somehow together. So this is something that this theory contemplates, and again, this is very similar to our concept of Maya. Here, before moving on, I want to address little grievances that we generally have against scientific dogma. The scientific paradigm is willing to accept implausible assumptions that somehow singularity just came into being, or a combination of lightning and storms and whatever led to forming of DNA, and from that single cell organism was born. Now the intricate structure of even a single cell is so complex that we haven't even been able to produce one in the laboratory so far. And all that happening just by chance. That is something that is acceptable to this paradigm, but not the existence of God. And that despite knowing the limitations of our observations faculties, which are basically our sensory senses, eyes and ears and all that, and plus, whatever apparatus that we may have on laboratory. Even combining all this, our ability to actually perceive the universe is extremely limited. Even we haven't even gone beyond our galaxy, and the universe is full of millions and billions of galaxies. So what we have seen so far is extremely limited. On the basis of that, to form a completely robust theory is almost impossible. Uh, also, the main problem here is the concept of consciousness is totally ignored or even rejected by this paradigm. And this is a very deep flaw because let's say even if we are able to somehow generate a human body in a laboratory, we can basically create it out of scratch. But still, how do you make it alive? What is the chetna in that? And that is something that we have no idea about. Not only that, but the community basically rejects the concept of consciousness altogether, and there is no progress in that, unfortunately. Here, we basically want to see what we can do to combine the two approaches together. So we saw a lot of similarities between what the Vedic rishis saw and stated, and what the scientific models found after spending billions of dollars to create these magnificent instruments that detect tiny particles, collisions, and subatomic particles and whatnot. But the thing is, even though the findings were reasonably similar, our rishis found them out like thousands of years ago. Here, I think the gap is between the approaches. So if we can manage to combine the two, I think the scientific and spiritual progress it will not only go in hand, but it will accelerate greatly. Uh, because there's perception that Vedas are all about spirituality. That is not true because even as Ishopadesha said, both para and apara vidya are needed to truly understand the world. And Vedas are not just full of spiritual knowledge. There is also mathematics, architecture, all kind of things there, which are basically worldly, and which itself goes to show that there need not be a dichotomy between science and spirituality or science or philosophy. And not only that is the case, but a society that does not recognize oneness in the universe, it will eventually become isolated, as we have become. I mean, basically, I'm stating the state of the world today because we, as a human, as a society, we are so concerned with our here and now that we are almost willing to destroy the world around us. And that's because we do not understand how interconnected we all are. When we destroy a forest, we may create a space to build a small city or a highway, but the implications on that are going to make eventually all of us miserable, not just spiritually, but also materially. So, to conclude, I think what I have found is while rejecting God as the basis of creation, scientific models make assumptions so wildly impossible that only God can possibly create those circumstances. And while energy and matter are given due importance in the scientific models, the concept of consciousness I just recently discussed is completely ignored. Uh, Vedic creation theory, on the other hand, fully submits to the supremacy of Brahman. That is the starting point. The starting point is the highest spiritual point of the Brahman, and from then, so we are traveling from attributeless Brahman to energy to matter, and in scientific parameter, it's from matter to going back to energy somehow, and then it is stopped because there's nothing to go beyond that for scientific paradigm. There is no Brahman there. Despite such differences, both models have shown convergences, and as I just mentioned, these convergences can be stronger if we manage to combine the two models, and if we do that, uh, philosophical, spiritual, and scientific progress for all of us as a society, as a world, it will revolutionize the world, and I think we all will be in much better space as a result. Here I rest my case. I hope it made sense. Look forward to hearing the feedback. Thank you.